All right, everybody. Welcome to this Friday. I am so excited. Stephen and I are super excited that we have Yvonne Alston here. Thank you to everyone who has joined us on this Friday, whether you're here with us live or you're going to watch on replay. Some of us who are here live will be watching on replay as well. That's kind of how this works. So today we're welcoming Yvonne, and Yvonne is an unapologetically authentic amplifier, advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. She established Indelible Impressions Consulting to advance important conversations, education, and training to help organizations understand the importance of culture and its impact on the human experience. Her firm and team, I see one of them here today, focus on centering the employee experience, amplifying personal and professional value, and inspiring hearts and minds as they challenge systems of inequity, champion dimensions of diversity, and drive inclusive practices holistically. Speaking to all of our DEIB hearts, so excited to have you join us here today to talk about busting the ladder myth. Success isn't just on the rungs. And so we're going to be speaking today from the perspective of women, but men. I'm glad that you're joining us too. So share your experiences too. But we're going to be talking about non-traditional career paths. What does that look like? What if I don't aspire to climb the ladder? We hope this is going to be interactive, and we want to hear from you today too. So with that, I will let Miss Yvonne share anything else she wants to share. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, I am so honored to be here. I love these conversations. You know, Tiffany, Suman, I have been a fan of your work, of the space you've created, of the amazing conversations that you're having every week. I've been honored to jump into some of them, to participate, and sometimes just to sit back and learn and sip my tea and just like I said, learn from all of the amazing followers of this. So thank you for having me. Super excited to talk about this, and really grateful for everyone that's here. So thank you very much. Just want to say to everyone, please feel free to comment, drop things in the chat. This is going to be extremely interactive. We only have an hour, but it's really important that I hear your voices. Thank you, Carl. Sean said, I'm a fan of Yvonne. Yes, thank you. Everyone, oh my God, you guys are great. You guys are fabulous. Thank you so much. So, all right, let's get to it. So, busting the ladder myth. What I want to start off with today is I want to find out from all of you, those of you who desire to participate, what does success mean for you? What does it look like for you? So you can either drop it in the chat, you can use your hand raising feature. Because I have the video panel off to the side, I can't necessarily see everyone, but Tiff or Suman, if you guys could just let me know if somebody's got their hand raised, have them come off mute and add that value to the convo.
Absolutely. Oh, Holly said, what I make it.
Okay. See,
Yes.
Holly, shots fired already. Like, seriously? She's like right out the gate with it. Look at her, too. I can see you, Holly. I see you. I love that. Okay, Joy, success is subjective. I agree with that wholeheartedly. So, what does that mean for you? If you would be so kind as to come off mute and articulate that.
Hi, Yvonne. Nice to meet you.
You too.
Thank you. So what I mean by that, I think a lot of it is based on upbringing and where you come from a lot of times. I always use this example. For one person, being a manager at Target might be considered success by their family and peers. For another person, based on where they come from, they might not be applying themselves like they should according to others. So what I would say is I am someone who's very hard on myself. So I don't feel I have achieved the level of success as I feel I should, but at the same time, just based on my upbringing, based on a lot of things I have done, I'll give myself some credit. I am a success and I continue to grow by being a lifelong learner. That doesn't necessarily mean I am rich or I am, a leader within a company. But what that means is I can provide for myself and my family in an appropriate manner. And, and I keep on growing in my career and as a person. So to me, that's success. And also having emotional and mental health, that being stable is also a matter of success, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And you raise a really good point, right? Is kind of the family dynamics and the communities that we grow up in, right? That can significantly influence what paths that we choose or don't choose, right? And there's a whole bunch that I think goes into that as well when we talk about socioeconomic circumstances, access, all of that. That plays a significant role oftentimes in what we choose and whether or not we have a career, right? Or we have a job. And those are also two different dynamics as well. So thank you so much for sharing that perspective. I appreciate that. It looks like Holly has her hand up. Come on, Holly.
So the only thing I wanted to add was that in the last few years, I've also wrapped my identity and my intersections into my success. So whatever I achieve, I've done that also while being a Black woman in America, which in and of itself is a huge feat. So
Right. That's a job all by itself. And you're alive and you're vertical. So hey. Those parts, right? So I think that that's really true. It's interesting, right? It's an interesting conversation, and a lot of it comes down to how we've been socialized. And I think, Joy, you hit on that a little bit as well. Before I move forward, is there anybody else who wants to chime in? I know I would love to hear from some of those other individuals that might identify as men in this conversation.
I think I qualify.
You think you qualify, Roy? Okay, go for it.
I'm just saying. So Yvonne knows this. I went through a huge life-changing event in December 8th, 2 days before my wife's 60th birthday. She passed away. So I've been fortunate to find a very supportive grief group, and I've gone through 2 weeks of that. And as I think about diversity and inclusion, I think there's a commonality that can be built because we all experience grief in some way, shape, or form. So I think we need a new acronym: diversity, inclusion, and grief. Can you dig it?
That was cute, Roy. But from a success standpoint, right? For you, what does success look like for you?
Success, well, you just mentioned it, being vertical is a good start, right?
Yeah.
But to me, I think success is bringing service to others and them feeling and appreciating it. In my job, it's great to sell stuff, right? But the thing that I feel most successful in is when I can help people solve their problems and help them accomplish their goals. Because it's sort of the give to get approach. I've always had a consultative approach to the way I do my job, but that also applies to life. And that's why I mentioned the grief thing is something through. So overcoming and being tenacious and surviving, but also being a better version of myself through that is the way I look at success. I don't, they say it's a journey. I think it's more of a process and approach and just becoming whoever I'm going to become.
Right.
Hopefully a better version of that person, whoever he's going to be. So that's my perspective.
I love that. And the best version of yourself, I'm seeing what's going on in the chat, right? And thank you, Cindy, for that point, right? That sounds like you're successfully moving forward, Roy. And sometimes it is that it's moving through different challenges in life, right? That is a huge success. I will say for myself, and Chris Lynn, as my co-lead, has been privy to this, and maybe Tiffany, you might know about this as well, but back in February, I lost my mom and my stepdad within a week of each other, and I buried both of them within 3 weeks of each other. And that was while I'm CEO and moving forward and trying to build this company, right? So thank you, Joy. And so for me, success, when I made the comment about being vertical, I mentioned that because um, that was that was success for me at certain points, right? Trying to work through that and trying to work at the same time, right? Being present, being vertical, getting up out of the bed, feet on the floor, like, okay, I did that. Thank you, right? Like, and, for those of you that know me well, I am unapologetically authentic about being a woman of faith. And that helped me as well. And that helped me to be successful in that, to getting to the other side of that. So thank you so much for everybody who has been sharing. Thank you for all the love you guys are showing me in the chat. I appreciate that. I always say I'm a whip, I'm a work in progress in many ways. And as Roy mentioned, for his grief, my own grief, it is a journey. It is a process. I think they are both. You do the process along the journey, so they go hand in hand. And so, yes, correct, Tiffany. We are all in some process on a journey. So, with that, I wanted to segue to this dynamic of the ladder, right? And so we've all, probably most of us on this call, have heard about the proverbial ladder, right? And a lot of it has to do with some of the things that Joy hit on, which is our conditioning and being socialized, right? How we define success. And historically, that has meant one, get more education, right? So beyond high school, finish high school, and then go on to a college of some sort, right? There was a time when it was, oh, okay, it's enough to go to community college, right? And then as I was coming along, then that wasn't enough. Community college was like a high school degree. And so it was like, no, you have to go to a four-year institution. And then beyond four-year institution, it became, no, you got to get your master's and then your PhD and all of this. And it was just became this dynamic of an insatiable need to continue to climb, right? And it really, I wonder for many of us, if those who had gone on to achieve certain goals educationally, right, was that really about that we crave the additional education? Or did we need to prove to others that we're capable and climb, right? And I think that is a huge part of it, right? Charlene says the way to weed folks out by using the education system. Absolutely, right? I had mentioned earlier about the accessibility factor. Who can go? Who can go and get advanced education? Who cannot? And maybe that's not just financial circumstances. That might be somebody who has a sick child, spouse, somebody in their family that they're helping to take care of, right? Not just about the financial means. Sometimes it's time. Sometimes it's other things that they are a parent, right? And they have other obligations in life that supersede this climb that we're all supposed to be doing to showcase our intellectual and skilled capabilities to employers so that we can earn more money. And it really is this Western culture model of, and I think it's referred to as the doing model, right? Which is work focused and very much oriented towards achieving goals and external rewards. And so that's the system that we've grown up in. And so every step that you climb essentially requires you to do something. And when it moves from education, then it's get the promotion, right? And the promotion is the most important thing we need to do, right? Get that promotion. And then that one promotion is not enough. You got to be working towards the next role. And I'll even say that when I was in corporate, my last corporate position, they had this philosophy, and I'd love to hear from some of you on this, that in order to move to the next role or the next rung on the ladder, you have to be doing your current job and that job too, to prove that you have the capabilities of doing that next job. So I know that was my experience. How many of the rest of you, either currently in your roles or in previous roles, had that position to you in that way? Nobody. It was just me.
Carl
Bad choices.
Sean's raising his
And
hand.
my
Oh,
hand is up
yes.
there, Yvonne. I know you probably can't see
I
everybody, but
couldn't see it.
my
Hey,
hand
Don't
is up
worry,
there.
we're watching.
come on, jump in here.
It is just awesome. Thank you for gracing us with your presence today. I truly appreciate it, and I am a fan. I follow a lot of your content, and you be saying some on point things. Hello to everybody. I know it's been a few weeks, but I'm glad to be here. Not taking up a lot of time on my own, but just to say that I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate you guys holding space for me. That has always been. I put in the chat earlier on the piece of that. I think a lot of the education piece has been misinterpreted to us because us as African Americans or people of color, we wasn't deemed understanding to learn, right? But we come from kings and queens from Africa that knew a whole lot of things intelligibly that we never actually said. And through the course of that, it's been put on us sort of like an onus to prove what we know. So in essence of it, we've all entangled ourselves with the school system, which provides our credit, which provides our credibility for what we're able to do. So when we think about that process, all of us really don't have a true understanding of what we want to be educated for, because we align ourselves with barriers that are put out there externally. If you get to this, then you can get this job. If you get that, then you can get that promotion. If you pass this, you get this degree. So we've always given these finish lines to go upon. So we just continue to go about it. And we put ourselves, and this is no knock on who said that in the chat, we put ourselves with this life learner mentality, where a lot of people right now are doing the things they want to do and ain't went to school. So who's the learner? Who's really the learner? So I just want to add that little piece in. Thank you for letting me share.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. I love that. Love that. And you're right. You know, there's always been this line, right? And I always find it very interesting of the ladder metaphor, right? Because it's almost like there are these lines that connect in between, right? And it usually is education, stepping up, right? Doing something different to obtain, whether that's, again, a degree, a promotion, getting married, buying a bigger house, driving a certain kind of car, right? Every step forward signifies to the world more accomplishment. So you really find yourself stuck on the ladder because there's always another goal ahead. There's always something more to obtain. And I love what Chris said in the chat. The prove yourself before the promotion is particularly biased towards women. Men are usually promoted based on potential. Okay, Chris, come unmuted, please, and speak more on that part.
What's up, everyone? I'm Chris Lynn, and good to meet you all. Good to be here. Yeah, so based on a lot of research, there's women tend to have to take on more responsibility, as Yvonne shared in her own experience, to prove themselves for the next role. Whether that's up, lateral, whatever it is, women need to take on more responsibility in order to show that they can take that piece on. Whereas men, they are often found to get promoted or moved into roles when they don't have the full capability, but they are quote unquote trusted based on their potential to make it happen or make it work. So when you talk about climbing the ladder, it's not even the biases that are working against everyone, and again, especially for women and women of color, but also for how that affects each one of us, and the additional efforts people of color and Black people need to put forth to then prove themselves even further. So it was just something I wanted to point out.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. And so when we look at that dichotomy between men and women, and that was a perfect segue, Chris. I feel like you were like all up in my slides and you didn't even see them. With pivoting to this particular point about the promotion stage. But before I go there, I think I saw Joy's hand up, correct? Did you want to jump into that, Joy?
Yes, thank you, Yvonne. So
Sure.
what Chris said is based on my lived experience is 100% true. Especially for being a Black woman. So I spent close to 10 years with the same company. And I had to take on extra responsibility and prove that I was worthy of getting a promotion, even though my white counterparts, a lot of them were promoted based on their potential.
Yeah.
And so I was told, even though I was doing the job, the position I wanted to be promoted in, they would not give me the title because there was always a reason as to why. And my thoughts were, well, I've been here for many years, so clearly I'm doing something right. You wouldn't just keep me employed if you didn't feel I was doing the right job. So, you know, that's just something, trust me, I've learned from there. I will never, ever, ever do something like that. I will not stay at a company for 10 years without being truly appreciated. But yeah, I think even more so, Black women and women of color have to deal with that a lot.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I've observed it, not just me, but other women who look like me too.
Absolutely. And I love what Charlene said too about giving you the title without the proper compensation, right? So I will share with you that most recently, I won't say who my husband's employer is, but at his employer, they did this really interesting phenomenon where they said to everybody that they went out to market and they realized that they were underpaying for particular roles or that people's titles were not really representative of what they did. But here's the interesting part. Some people got new titles, new roles, and had got elevations and compensation. But for a particular segment of the people, and majority of them, ironically, looked a lot like us, right? They got title changes to make them more marketable, but they didn't get anything else. They didn't get new responsibilities. They didn't put people under them for opportunities for growth. They did not even establish a new professional development track. They just gave them a new title that said, this will help you to be more marketable. Should you want to get ready for it? Should you want to go elsewhere? Yeah. Yeah, Tiffany, that face, right? Like it is the blush emoji with the red cheeks and the eyes popping out. It's all that, right? Because it's like, what are you saying? Like, you don't really value me, or, are you kidding me? So, what does this new title really do for me other than put me in a better position to leave here? So really interesting dynamics of what organizations do in that regard. But I don't want to pivot too far off track because I do want us to get to the part of the conversation about the broken rung phenomenon. Does anybody here know what the broken rung phenomenon really is? Anybody want to come off mute? Oh, Chris, fire. Titles don't pay the bills. My title change costs you nothing. Whew. Shots fired. Okay. Awesome. All right. So, according to McKinsey, the broken rung effect is what is holding women often back from achieving. Women continue to face this usually at the first step up to a managerial role, right? So, for every 100 men promoted to a manager, only 86 women are promoted. So as a result, this is part of the reason why we see the vast disparity and why men outnumber women significantly at the managerial level, including C-suite, is because literally there are fewer women to promote at higher levels. So when we start to really think about systems, and I know that word has been dropped in the chat a couple of times, absolutely, this is part of the system, right? It was created and designed to do exactly what it is doing, which is to say that women do not deserve the ability to continue to ascend the way that men do. And I think that was a very key point that I believe it was that Chris had pointed out, because men are typically promoted based on potential, whereas women, it's the proving. So that's very interesting, right? I find it even more interesting that there are two P's in that, but I guess it just happened, right? So women proving, men potential. Very interesting dynamic there. And so what we find is that this essentially becomes the Achilles heel in business that stifles women from getting to those senior level positions. And then you add in things like race and nationality, whether you're first generation American for your family, whether English is your first language or not, whether you have an ability or disability. That is all taken into consideration. And then you see, once you start layering in the intersectionality that even Holly mentioned a few minutes ago, you start to see that some of those, when you have all of that, you can't even get on the ladder, right? In the first place. But that pivots me to the next part of the discussion is, why is it always about the ladder, right? Why is it about the ladder? Why don't we talk and esteem those who decide, I don't want to climb the ladder? And that's not a measurement of success for me. Are we not recognizing those who say, you know what? Not only do I not want to build the ladder, but I have a great position building the ladder, holding the ladder steady and strong for others, or creating a sure foundation for the ladder to stand on so that those who desire to climb it can do so with the least amount of barriers and obstructions. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because I think when we really start contemplating the pandemic and some of what I refer to as the collateral beauty of the pandemic, right? Those things that we got as a result of it that are very important. We got the opportunity to reflect, right? And so for those of us who had, and I wasn't one of these, because I had already, transitioned and left 22 years of corporate and launched my own shop. But for some, it was like sitting back and looking in the mirror and saying, you know what? That is not who I am, right? I have for far too long given my blood, sweat, tears, time, burnout, stress, mental health, physical health, my edges, everything to this job. And I am over it. And I don't want to do that anymore. And furthermore, that is not who I am. That is what I do. And there is that distinction there with that, right? Between us not being our jobs, right? We're so used to, I think, as a culture and a society, ends up being almost the second question that we ask when we meet people. It's, hi, how are you? I'm so. Okay, nice to meet you. So what do you do? Right? We don't ask, who are you? Tell me something that's meaningful about you. Some deeper questions that really peel back the onion in a very meaningful way. We ask, what do you do and why? Because somehow or another, and we know, as I said earlier, based on Western civilization and how we've been socialized, that there is that measurement, that if you say this, then that is who you are. And so I'm seeing the chat kind of like blowing up and a lot going on. Does anybody want to come off mute and share something?
The edges are getting,
I just,
but there's a lot of other good stuff going on in there, but you ruined us with edges.
Bye,
Everyone do with the
Nancy.
edges. And that was like right off the top of the dome in the moment. I didn't even give that any thought. But it's very true, right? The stress and the health implications that come along with that. So the fact that we have, as a society, like tethered it to status symbols, right? And that becomes how we feel about ourselves and also what we're saying to that other person automatically is like now you have to match that in some way, right? Either you gotta, if I'm on the receiving end and I'm talking to someone and right now, yes, I'm a CEO, but there was a time when I wasn't, right? But if I met someone, they're like, oh, I'm the CEO of blah, blah, blah. It was like, oh, you know what I mean? You almost felt like I'm so honored to be in your graces, your good graces, and in your company. I'm so honored that you would speak to me, right? For some people, it might be that they're in administration. For other people, they might be in a position that is more considered blue collar, right? For other people, they might be an essential worker. For other people, they might be a bagger at ShopRite. And for those of you who are not from Connecticut, you may not know what ShopRite is, but it's a grocery store. But right, like we automatically feel this requirement to define ourselves through what we do. And I think that we are now at the point where there's been this dramatic shift that says, no, it's not about what I do that I is part of my identity. It is about that authenticity that is the measurement of success. I am successful not because of how many initials I have after my name, what title I hold, how many people. Thank you, Joy. Okay, I appreciate that. Shop right in the house. And so, the fact that we just ascribe it that way, but now we're saying, no, it's about who I am. It's about what brings me joy. It's about my ability for my whole self to show up in the most authentic way possible. And that to me is success. And I will say for even myself, when people have talked to me about my career trajectory, about leaving corporate and launching Indelible, I say all the time, I have never been more successful, more effective, more productive, more efficient, none of it than I am now. And it has nothing to do with me being the CEO. But it does have everything to do with the fact that I am unapologetically authentic about who I am, what I stand for, what is meaningful to me. And when I look at the woman in the mirror, I look at her and I say, right? Good morning, gorgeous, Mary J. Blige, all day, because it is in that authenticity that I exist. But that unhinged me so that the best parts of Yvonne can show up to every environment, no matter what it is, whether it's in a business setting, if it's in interactions with my family, if it's contributing in community, whatever that is, right? That is how we can, and I believe should, define success. We have to flip this notion and how we've been socialized on its head to say that what is most important is some of the things that have been shouted out here on this call. I think Joy put it out there, and I think Holly did as well. The mental health, right? How successful are you if you have a high level position that stresses you out? You're never really have time for your family or things that are meaningful for you. You're having multiple glasses of wine or brandy at night just to relax, to come down from the day in order to only ruminate on it, sleep maybe a bit, right? But not truly rested, getting your REM as you should be, to wake up and do it the next day over and over again. You've got the title. You might have stuff, right? Maybe you're rocking, and I'll speak to this from the perspective for myself. as identifying as a woman, for the longest time, it was like, okay, I've got the latest Michael Kors or whatever. I've got all the coats. I'm looking like Olivia Pope walking up in here. The heels are clickety clacking. Everybody knows I got presents. I'm 5'9.5" without heels. I'm 6 feet when I rock them. I am making an entrance, right? And also network. Who's in my network? Who's in my inner circle? Who can I tap and call on? And I was so swirled up in that. I was so swirled up in that until I understood that my ability to produce and accomplish my goals is really about the success, right? And not all of that other stuff. And that if I was putting myself in a position where other people get to define it and limit it and put it in a box and then determine not only my value, right? As a human being, my value, my intellectual property, and then to ascribe a bare minimum dollar value to that, or tell me you're not, I'm not quite sure that you're VP level yet, which I actually have to laugh now as a CEO. It's like, okay. However, right? Like we have to get beyond that. And so I want us as a group here and as a Holly. Holly. I love you, Holly. I love you all. Holly is so unapologetic about it all. And I love all of you for being that way. It feeds my soul, it fills my cup. But right, like we have to do that. We have to change the dynamic, which means we have to stop having these conversations on the side. And as I mentioned to Suman and Tiffany before we got started, they need to be mainstream conversations. We need to be having these conversations in the workplace. We need to be, if you are in a workplace, going to those people who are building the ladders, who are stabilizing it, who have created the foundations, and recognize them. Say thank you and make sure that they feel valued, and let them know that you appreciate the level of success that they've chosen for themselves. So I'm going to stop talking for a moment. Suman, come on.
Okay, so I can't even keep up with the chat. Let's start with that. And everything, I'm listening, trying to read and do too many things. Everything you're saying is spot on with me. But I also want to say, since we have so many parents here, I think
Yes.
parents need to step up and talk to their children about what success is. I had mentioned to you earlier, I have a really good friend whose daughter is a senior in high school. And the daughter said, I want to go to beauty school. And the mom is really struggling with this, right? And I know we want our children to be financially secure. And I know we want our children to do better than we did, whatever that means, right? I know all of that. But the way this mother is struggling, she's looking at it as a failure within herself, that her daughter
Yes.
wants to do beauty school and not a 4-year college or whatever is the next step that's
Yeah.
supposed to happen. So I think as parents, we need to
Yes.
have conversations. I mean, I'm in the midst, my son's a senior, and I literally tell him, maybe it's selfishly financially, I'm like, can you just go to community college? Like, it's good, you could do it, you don't have to. Or even growing up when he loved playing with cars, and I'd be like, hey, you could be a mechanic. Maybe you can own a business one day, but it's okay. What brings you joy? Because we got to
Right.
do this for 40 plus hours a week, people. 40 plus hours a
100%.
week, right? Like, who wants
Yes.
to go somewhere where they hate it? So
Right.
do something that you love, and everything else will come with it, So maybe you don't live in the 5,000 square foot house. That's
Right.
okay. If you could be happy that you go to work and you come home to an apartment or wherever it is that brings you joy. That's so important these days. So parents need to have this conversation with their kids too.
You know what? And I'm so glad that you brought that out, because that doesn't happen frequently enough. And I will say for myself, exact same thing. when my daughter was saying she wanted to go to community college, and I was like, oh, you have all these capabilities and you could do this and you could do that. And she's like, well, I want to figure out exactly what type of nursing. And doesn't it make more sense for me to figure that out at a cheaper cost than do it? And it was like, okay, yes, smart, right? The beauty school thing, right? If this is what she loves, she's going to be successful, right? You can't help but to be successful when it's something that you love because it taps a different kind of vein. It really does. When people talk to me about how passionate I am about DEIB and culture transformation and all of this, and they're like, Yvonne, it's like palatable across the screen. And I'm like, I am completely functioning in purpose. Like, I don't even have to zhuzh it up at all. This is me when I talk about these things. And when you are connected to that calling, to that purpose, success gets measured so differently. The fact that I'm on here talking to all of you, checkbox for the day, killed it in my book, being able to talk and have this dialogue with you all. So I'm going to mute my own voice for a moment. I know that Laura has her hand up. So Laura, come on. And so does Holly.
So education and I have a love relationship. So when I had children, I sent them to private school. I'm still paying for that. And my daughter graduated and I'm still paying for that. And as I mentioned in the chat, I have 2 masters. I'd love to go get a PhD, so my ex would have to call me doctor. But when it was time for my son to go to college, he really didn't care, but it was still like an expectation for him. And I mean, like him personally, for him, when he elected not to go back after 2 years of college, it was very difficult for me to accept that because my generation, in my family, my generation was the first. We were all expected to go to college. So to accept that my son was not college material was very, very difficult. And he is currently happily married in West Virginia at 28, working in a pottery factory. And and every now and then he'll say, yeah, I'd like to go back to school. But the reality is he's probably not going to have that opportunity for a very long time.
Yeah.
And my daughter just graduated high school. She's taking a gap year. And I keep telling her, why don't you take some classes at CCAC, knock out some of the regular classes. And then when you get to Penn State, which is, you don't even want to go there, you can concentrate on what you want to study. And last night, like I said at dinner, I said to her, look, you don't have to go to college. And she's like, oh, no, I'm going to college and I'm going to go get my master's because that's, something because she doesn't want to be, currently she's a fulfillment person at Whole Foods. She says, I don't want to do that for my entire life. And he's not throwing pottery. He's doing one of the presses. He works at the pottery factory that makes Fiesta ware, if you know what Fiesta ware is. And he works one of the giant presses that presses out the molds, or I'm not 100% clear on what he does, but it's certainly manual labor and he loves it. It's like, okay.
Yes. And if he loves it and he's happy, right? And I dare say that, and I completely respect where you're coming from, Laura. I get it, right? I am the first college educated person in my immediate family. And so it was very important to me. But again, I think it goes back to sometimes we can have the degrees, we can have all the stuff and everything that denotes from a societal perspective that we're successful and i.e. happy. But majority of people, when you talk to people who are really wealthy, who really have a lot of money and a lot of influence and a lot of power, majority of those people are broken internally. They are bankrupt in spirit. They are miserable. They've got challenging marriages, et cetera, et cetera. So those two things don't go hand in hand. So I dare say for me and mine, if my daughter is happy, and I said this in jest earlier to Tiffany and Simone, I was just like, listen, hey, the hairdresser stripping on a pole, not what I want for her, but if she's happy and safe and that is what works for her, who am I? Because the most important thing that I would ever want for my child is that they are fulfilled, they know who they are, right? And that
Yes.
they bring
Well,
that to the world and live that way intentionally and unapologetically.
the reason I am the reason I do what I do is because when I was going into college decades ago, I wanted to be a fiction writer. That's all I've ever wanted to do. And my dad told me
Wow.
at that time that no, you're never going to make money at that. So what you need to do is go to school for technical writing. And
Mm.
I'm like, okay, I'm 18. I see my dad being unhappy at the job he's in. So I'm going to follow his advice because I need to live. Right. And I sometimes very briefly wonder, well, maybe I would have been the next Stephen King. Who knows? You know,
You still
but it's
could
like,
be.
oh,
I'm just
trust me,
saying.
I haven't stopped writing. It's just I don't have
Good.
a lot of time
Please
now
don't.
to focus on it. Right. But again, you know, it's the parent instructing the child
Mm.
and me not necessarily knowing any better at that time. It's like, okay, well, I don't know how to go about just being a writer or a fiction writer. So yeah, I'm going to go to college and get a degree so that I can get a job that can pay for me while I'm doing the fiction writing. So I'm sorry. Okay, Holly, I'm done.
Thank you for sharing, Laura. We appreciate that. And it's an important conversation. It's a struggle. Absolutely. Yes, Holly.
So what I'll be super quick, but one of your hairstylist example, or who brought up the hairstylist example,
Simone.
Suman, yeah.
Simone.
So it really brings up for me, it kind of triggers for me the plight of Black people and African Americans and women specifically in this narrative of the United States and how systemically, you know, we've been brainwashed to think other than. And the reason why is because, you know, my great-grandmother was a part of the Great Migration to the North. She had 16 brothers and sisters, and the majority of them migrated to Gary, Indiana. And the men went and worked in the steel mills, and all of the women became hairdressers. Every last one of them. My great-grandmother was one of the first Black women to own her own salon in the city of Chicago. And then when we think about stories like Madam C.J. Walker, the first Black woman millionaire, right? But then now, as time goes on, you shouldn't want to aspire to be in hair care. You shouldn't want to aspire to be in beauty, in the beauty realm at all, because you should follow, and I'll say this, the white man's training, go get this education, go get these student loans, because that's what they said, not realizing the value in our own histories, because we were brainwashed and taught that that's not good enough. And we were brainwashed and taught that, you know, even though Madam C.J. Walker is the first Black woman millionaire of an empire based on hair care, you got a person who's still struggling, and Black mothers and fathers do it to this day, who struggle with their children wanting to go into the beauty arena. And that's like, and why are we not encouraged? It's systemically, it's just a problem.
Yeah. And it very much is. And it goes back to the systems, right? And what we buy into. And it's the who. You know, sometimes when I hear that from certain people, when they will make a statement, I'll say, who said that? The they. Who are they?
They.
Right? Who are the theys? There is this ambiguous enigma in the world that is like the they, and nobody can go all the way back to figure out who is the originator of they. So if I don't know they, I am definitely not going to be heeding their advice because I don't know who they are. All right, Sean, then Joy, then Cindy.
Yvonne,
Funny, Joy.
this has been top notch. Just what you're talking about, and I definitely go along with that. And what I would say, and it's not a direct as a Laura, but it's direct in the thinking that she's encompassing. All of us have encompassed that. We've been sold a bill of goods, and that's just exactly what I'm going to call you that. What I'm going to call it, because education. I know a lot of successful people that have not stepped foot in the college. And that ain't how they did it. They did it through trades. I got a truck driver down the street, and his home is worth $200,000 more than mine. And he never went to school. He drove a truck. So it's the identity purpose of society and what they has put on us to say what matches what. I like what Joy put in there. Anything you love is success. That's about as simplistically as I can put it. If you love it and you doing it, it's successful because it's providing for you the things that no one externally can give you. No one can give you success. They can
Nobody can give
match
you
it with
joy.
they can match it with their visions or their pictures of what it should be. Instagram, social media does such a great job at that. Matching what you think success should be driving, should be riding in, should be married to. No, I think success in all of it stems from who you are. Yes, we've all been in these patterns of what we've learned, what been pushed at us, even as parents. I made an intentional effort as a parent of two African-American kids to not push them down the road that my parents did. My dad was a sports dude. He made me play 3 sports and I got no bigger, no greater, and didn't get no career. But I did that to make him happy. How many years did I frustrate my own self, not delving into my talents because I lived through a parent who said their parent told me it's okay to go to school. We have to do that. I put in the chat. We have to support and encourage with the wisdom that we have instead of dictate and guilt trip to what the child should be, because that's a lot of where it stems from. I didn't get there, so I'm gonna make you get there. It's not always a clear thing of parenting.
Well, you said it, right? And I think somebody else mentioned it earlier, that do better, right? And so how are we defining the doing better? That's part of the problem, right? And again, we're seeing that from our lens based on a system that doesn't want us to do better, right? So we've got to rethink and then relanguage that. Yes, Joy, and then Cindy.
So I'll try to make this brief because a lot of this about education resonates with me. I am a non-traditional college graduate, and I'll explain that. My counselors, teachers never, ever, ever mentioned college to me when I was in high school. But supposedly I went to one of the best high schools in Los Angeles. Now I know why that was never emphasized by the educational system. But I graduated at 17, so I took a year off and then I went to community college. Being that it wasn't encouraged, there was no college fund for me, and I started living on my own at 18. So I went to community college for years, then life happened, and then I had to work. But I always wanted to get my education, not because I felt that's the pinnacle of success. It was something that I felt I should do. And even someone a lot older used to tell me, "Kid, you're way too smart not to have a degree." So maybe he's right. But however, I was not going to get myself in college loan debt because I lived on my own. I had no support from my parents or anyone. So I kind of did it my way. So how I paid for college was only 5 years ago. My employer implemented a program. They had always done tuition reimbursement, but this one was different. They said, if you go to this particular school, we will pay for it 100%. Now, I went to the University of Phoenix. I know I had heard a lot of biases about for-profit school, but I did it anyway. I got my bachelor's in 2 years without any debt. It was a great experience because in my mind, all schools are for-profit at this point. And I got my degree on someone else's dime. No college debt. And yes, his having a degree opened certain doors for me, but I've written a LinkedIn post. I'm a recruiter. I've been a recruiter for many years, long before I had my degree. I was a damn recruiter before I got a damn good recruiter before I got my degree. Was college great? Absolutely. But my point of bringing up my personal experience is, if someone is not in the position to pay for a 4-year college, it is unnecessary. It's foolish to even do that. Go to community college. Like I put in the notes, I don't care about the stigma. If your child, or if you really want an education, I learned so much from community college, things that weren't even taught to me, that should have been taught to me in high school, but I learned so much. And it saved me a lot of money because I don't come from privilege. And, also there are a lot of companies now that will pay for you to go to school. They will foot the bill. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and it's a tax write-off, of course, but who cares? It's on their dime. So
Right.
I think a lot of parents cause themselves a lot of anxiety. It's like, the type of kid you have. If your kid's not an A student, but has potential, send them to a junior college or let them find their way. Cosmetology school is a great option if someone is really
Absolutely.
talented and passionate. So we need to just set aside our biases and just let people do what they want to do within reasoning.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Cindy, you've had your hand up and you've waited so patiently. Come on.
I'm enjoying this conversation so much. I
Good.
wanted to share a thought that came to me from one of my favorite books, which is called How to Steal Like an Artist. And
Mm.
yeah, and the person writing this book considers all of us creatives. So we all create something. You don't have to be
We
like
do.
painting, right? To be an artist.
Yes. Yes.
And he says at the very beginning of his book, advice is someone talking to themselves in the past. And, and then he goes on to say that that's what he's doing too by writing this book. But what I love about that is because it's really true. And I don't have children. Let's full disclaimer, I don't have children. I know it's got to be one of the loveliest and hardest jobs on the planet. But I've received a lot of terrible advice from people outside my family, just people, seeing me somewhere doing something and telling me what they think I should do, right? And unfortunately, when I was younger, I took some of that to heart. And, I think something Carl said, I think it was in the chat, like, I feel as your job as an adult is to get to know yourself and
That part.
to understand what it is you really, really want at your core. And those two things are not easy. That's why I'm a coach, because those two things are really, really difficult. But you also have to know that both of those things are going to evolve.
Thank
And if you're not
you.
evolving, you're stuck and you're standing still. And so to me, success is knowing who I am, being able to hear and say, I love you, and open to the evolution that is bound to happen throughout your life. What we study in school, interestingly, what I did study in school keeps coming back and helping me, and I love it. But I often think about, what if I had studied botany? What if I had studied all these things that I thought of but didn't have the confidence to pursue? I could pursue them now if I want to. But I think for me, the road to authenticity is to keep asking yourself, who am I? Where am I? And what do I want?
Love that. I love that. I love that so much. It's part of the reason why this last graphic is what it is, because I really believe that we could be the architects, right? Of not only just our own fate, so to speak, but also of our own life. We can measure based on what we want for us. And I think what you identified there, Cindy, is so, so very key.
I'm laughing at the chat. You guys are great.
I know, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. That's why I love you all. And that's why I was very excited when Tiffany and Suman, who I've been mispronouncing her name for some time, and I caught it in the chat and I reached out to her and course corrected myself, because I think that that's important. People's identities matter and how you pronounce their name matters. So that's what I teach and preach. So that's what I walk. But thank you all for your insights. I loved having this conversation. I love the contributions that you all made. And I'm in gratitude this afternoon. And let's just continue to live this out loud with intentionality and authenticity. Let's encourage others to do the same, because the more that we do have these conversations unapologetically, the more that we can be part of the change that we want to see. But we got to talk about it and we got to be about it. All right. So love to you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm sure that I'll probably see you all next Friday when somebody else is gracing the stage, or we're just having a community convo. So back to you, Tiffany and Suman.
Thank you, Yvonne. This is, you could tell the chat's lit, the conversation was fire, the pieces of information, just everyone sharing personal experiences was amazing. It just created such a rich conversation. So thank you for joining us and being here today, Yvonne. Absolutely appreciated everything that you said. Next week is a community connect. So we will probably 99% talk about a follow-up to today's conversation. So join us, whoever can, and Yvonne, if you're able, please join us. Anything else to add, Tiffany?
No, just thank you again, everybody. We really, truly enjoyed you sharing, and we look forward to debriefing probably next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much,
everyone.
Yvonne.
Bye. Thank you.
Hey, everybody.
Have a good week.